What's going on YouTube? It's Teach, back again with another video, and today we have a little bit of a downer one, but hopefully you guys still enjoy it. I'm going to give you one reason for concern for all 32 NFL teams as we come closer and closer to the start of the regular season. Let me hear your thoughts down below in the comments section. What's the one thing that you're a little iffy about with your favorite squad? Or as we go throughout this video, if you think, actually I think this team has a different concern, let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section and why you think that down below. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Hit that like button if you do. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. All that sort of fun stuff. And let's go ahead and kick things off. Starting with the Buffalo Bills. My main question is, who's that number 2, right? Like, I've said this plenty of times throughout the offseason. And that offense last year, it was Stephon Diggs, and then he got taken away. They were scrapping for anybody to make a difference, and oftentimes it was Josh Allen using his legs. But man, they got a lot. They have literally millions of reasons why maybe they should cut back on that. So I put Dalton Kincaid in this picture because honestly, I think he might end up being the number 2 target for this team. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like number 2 at the end of the season in targets and receptions. This team just needs someone other than Stephon Diggs to be able to win games. And when he starts seeing double coverage and starts getting that over-the-top shadow coverage like they did in the playoff game last year against Cincy, they need someone else who can reliably get open. And I think Schultz, whether it's the slot or playing tight end, could be that guy. But they just need, whether it's Gabe Davis, Khalil Shakir, they need someone who will step up and take the pressure off of Stephon Diggs if this team wants to get to the Super Bowl. Dolphins, I'll go number 2 corner. And this is tough because if you saw my Reason for Hope video, I mean, it's a loaded roster. I really have a hard time finding holes on this roster. But while Jalen Ramsey's down, who's that number 2 corner? Could it be Cam Smith, who's in this picture? Could it be Noah Igbenogany, finally kind of had a breakout season? Maybe. Could it be more of Kuder Kodru, who was a nice player for them last year? Potentially. But that's just something I need to get an answer for. And with the team that has as few holes as there are, when you do see one, it makes for an easy kind of thing to point out and say, maybe that's a little concerning. And, secondary, just like the offensive line, is a weak link unit. You're going to pick on the weak link. So if they have a bad number 2 corner on the field, opposing offense are going to take advantage of that. Patriots, I'll go no elite wide receiver. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it means Mac Jones can play true to himself, right? He's a cerebral processor and a very accurate passer. So by not having a number 1, he doesn't have any bias saying, hey, I need to get this guy 15 targets a week. He can just say, hey, who's open? And just keep it at that. Nope, it's Juju this play. Oh, it's Devontae Parker here. Nope, it's Tyquan Thornton open behind the defense now. Maybe that's a good thing. To me, I have a hard time envisioning that. To me, I think you need to have an alpha guy who can make those tough plays and do the dirty work. And right now, New England doesn't have that. They have a lot of okay guys I wouldn't mind having on the roster as wide receiver, maybe 2, but preferably 3 and 4. But without that wide receiver 1, Bill O'Brien may have a huge impact, but how much does it really move the needle without that alpha number 1 guy? Let me get to the Jets. Tough one because, man, I like a lot of what that team is on paper. I'll just say defensive regression because defense can be so variable. And the reason I have a problem saying this, even as I'm making this argument, is let's say this defense goes from, let's just say in your opinion, they were the number 1 defense in the league last year, and they go down to the number 8 defense in the league this year. Yes, it's a step in the wrong direction, but the amount of war lost and the difference that means in their record is almost certainly counteracted by not having guys named Zach Wilson, Mike White, and Chase Striveler starting games for you. And instead it becomes Aaron Rodgers, a 3-time MVP winner and a Super Bowl champ. So I say defensive regression because it's tough to imagine this team as number 1 defense, number 2 defense again. But it's certainly capable too at the same time. That's where it's like the other side of this, where I'm really being torn here, is like loaded defensive line with plenty of depth. Linebacking room is fine. They've been able to make do. Secondary, maybe there's not as much depth as I'd like, but the headline starters, Reed, Sauce, Whitehead, Amos is a backup as well at safety. Michael Carter the second in the slot. I mean, not a lot of holes to pick through there on top of what should be a pretty good pass rush, and Robert Saleh always schemes it up really well there. So I'll say defensive regression just because it's hard to be the number 1, number 2, number 3 defense, consecutive years. But even that, downturn is going to be counteracted by the upgrade they got at quarterback in regards to wins. So I'm kind of reaching for straws there for the Jets. Let me get to the AFC South. Texans, I'll go pass rush, and this is, of course, excluding Will Anderson. He's a top 3 pick, and he's looked great this preseason. And while I didn't see him in the same light as a Chase Young, Bosa's, Myles Garrett, or anything like that, he was still clear-cut number 1 edge for me this past year, and I think he will be a cornerstone piece of that defensive line. It's just, like Jonathan Grenard, Malik Collins, Ronaldo Lopez. Like, are those guys doing enough to help you win week in and week out? Or does Will Anderson kind of turn into poor man's Myles Garrett, seeing double teams week in and week out because he's the only guy who can win in one-on-ones? That's kind of my concern going into this year. And in turn, what does that do for the rhetoric of Will Anderson? Oh, well, he's not getting a ton of sacks, so he's not good. He's a bust. It's like, no, he's just getting more attention than anybody else in that Houston front seven deserves. So he's being shut down because of it. So hopefully some other guys step up and they find a way to generate some other pass rush. Some of that will come back to D'Amico Ryans. The Colts, I'll go young corners here, and I don't know if it's necessarily a major concern. We just got to see. I love Juju Brents. He's one of my favorite players in the league. Honestly, if he went in the first round, I would have supported the team who did that. Darius Rush to me was a guy who easily should have gone day 2. And then even like a Jalen Jones, like I didn't mind late third once you get into kind of the 95 to 100 range. Thought he could find a home then. 4th round for sure. He ends up going round 6, maybe 7, honestly. I think he might have been a 7th rounder. But they got a ton of young corners they drafted with Brent, Rush, and Jones. And we'll see how they play. You know, I just can't remember a time where 3 rookies were all leaned on to be pretty much the top outside perimeter corners, and it went well. I can't remember the last time it happened in general, so I don't know if it's gone poorly, but I can say for certain I can't remember a time where it definitely went well. So that's kind of my concern, especially for a team that doesn't have a great pass rush. Barring some surprises, you know, that could be complicated, and that could make that secondary look that much worse. The good news, though, I think all 3 of those guys make a lot of sense for a Gus Bradley defense. I think they all could definitely be really good cover 3 corners. Juju Brents and his movement skills plus his size. Darius Rush, length, height, speed. Jalen Jones to me was like, if I'm drafting him, it's because I run a lot of cover 3. I think that's his natural fit. So they got guys who I think could make sense to that scheme. It's just 3 rookies as your top 3 outside corners. We'll have to wait and see on that. Jags' new tackle duo won't be the last time you see me use that. And, you know, Cam Robinson may not be all world, but he is middle of the road. And in a time where the league has a shortage of starting offensive line talent, even your average starting left tackle's a pretty wanted commodity. So he's suspended for 4 games, and in the meantime, we'll see Walker Little plus Anton Harrison at left and right tackle, respectively. And I just don't know what I'm getting there. I liked Little as a first rounder. I loved Anton Harrison. He was my OT3, so I have a lot of stake, and I think that tackle tandem can be good. But we just have no real major NFL sample size to pull from. Anton Harrison's obviously a rookie, and Walker Little coming into this year has played like 350 to 400 snaps. So just not enough to really know what these guys are all about. I believe in the talent, but I could also see where these guys have a rough start to the career. Even just look at Bernard Ryman. I could see something like that playing out for both these guys, really. Where Ryman, maybe not his best brand of football for the first 8 weeks, but then kind of turns a corner, figures it out. But what does that mean for the Jags? Like, if these tackles struggle for 8 weeks and this team starts out 4-4, 3-5, and maybe Houston's better than we thought, maybe Tennessee's legit, or whatever the case may be. Maybe it just means that Jacksonville's locked into being the lowest division-winning, you know, seed when we get to the postseason. Who knows what those postseason ramifications might be? And in turn, if you're the 4 seed, hey, that means you're getting the Chargers as the 5 seed. You're getting the Ravens maybe as the 5 seed. That's not a great matchup you want to be stepping into when going into the postseason. It's going to be hard no matter what it is in the AFC, really. But I just wonder what that tackle tandem looks like and what that maybe does to stint what we anticipate the growth of Trevor Lawrence and offense looking like this season. Tennessee Titans, I'll go cornerback room. And kind of off the note, man, you know, prayers up for Caleb Farley. What a scary story. I did not think I was going to be seeing in the headline, and it's crazy to think that his dad passed away like that. That is not something that I think anybody saw coming. So, you know, hopefully he's doing well, and hopefully the family is coping with that as best they possibly can. And maybe this stirs up the kind of breakout season that Tennessee needs out of Caleb Farley, but kind of leaving him outside the picture because who knows where that goes. Rajah McCurry in the slot, I think, is actually pretty good. Sean Murphy Bunting, his best year in Tennessee in Tampa Bay, was actually played on the outside his rookie season. So maybe it's a good move for him to move out to the perimeter. And then Christian Fulton's a player I like a lot, and he's the guy in the picture. But last year was a bit of a down year. So Tennessee's kind of collectively rooting on a lot of guys to have breakout bounce-back seasons, whether it's Farley having a breakout year, Christian Fulton getting back on track, Sean Murphy Bunting getting back to where he was as a rookie, Rajah McCurry kind of having a breakout year too. Like, they're just leading a lot of asterisks and leading a lot of if statements, which always kind of makes me a little concerned. Could it happen? Sure, but when you're leaning on one if, okay, that's 50-50. If you're leaning on 4 guys having an if this season, then that's where it gets a little harder to break out and your odds go down. It's just like, you know, putting together a parlay. 4 legs, less likely it's going to hit. And that's kind of where I feel like the Tennessee cornerback room is at right now. Then we get to the Denver Broncos. What if Russell Wilson isn't it? And I'll be honest, will he be better than what he was for most part of last year? Probably. Like, you know, week 17, week 18, it felt like Russ got a little bit better after they fired Nathaniel Hackett, you know, basically. And maybe could we see that Russ? Yeah, I could see that. But prime Russ, and, you know, I'm not even one to buy into the rhetoric of, like, Russ was never good. He was just carried by a good situation in Seattle. Nah, forget about that. Russ had years where he was legit. And if you're thinking he's going to be that this year now that Sean Payton's there, I have a hard time buying into that, and I think you're in for a rude awakening this upcoming season. So what happens if Russ is like QB 16 in the NFL this year? What does that mean for the Denver Broncos? Probably means they're missing the playoffs. So that's kind of my concern right now for the Broncos. Chiefs, new tackle duo. Like I said, you weren't going to see that. You were going to see that once more in this video. And again, Donovan Smith, kind of like Cam Robinson, there is something to be had about being a middle-of-the-road average tackle, serviceable as a starter. And Smith, probably a little bit better in pass protection than he is in run blocking, so actually a decent add there for Kansas City compared to Orlando Brown Jr., who, good enough in pass protection, but I think a really good run blocker. And then Jawan Taylor, kind of the same story. Has had plenty of years, or not plenty of years, the last 2 years in Jacksonville, we saw him kind of turn a corner and figure it out as a pass protector. Still not a very good run blocker, but I think that's fine for Kansas City because they have such great run blockers on the inside. But nonetheless, it's still a new tackle tandem there in Kansas City. So there's no guarantee it looks the same, right? Like I always go back to the Eagles' dream team where it's just like, dude, there's no way this could go wrong. And boy, did it go wrong. So it may look good on paper. Donovan Smith, Jawan Taylor, love that. That's a great way to kind of replace their tackles from last season. But I need to see it. And we may get to week 2 and be like, yeah, these guys are playing great. Don't worry about it. This offensive line's legit. Patrick Mahomes going to have years to throw. It's going to be one of the best teams in football. And that's what I'm anticipating. But if there is an avenue to where the Chiefs are not good, it's because Donovan Smith is disappointing, Jawan Taylor gets hurt, or he's disappointing, and they both kind of take a collective step back. And in turn, Patrick Mahomes is under more pressure than what we've seen. And the other thing to take into account is Donovan Smith, over the last couple of years, has been blocked for Tom Brady, who's been getting the ball out quick, and also doesn't have major deep drops like Patrick Mahomes. And then for Jawan Taylor, the last 2 years, it's been Trevor Lawrence. And 2 years ago, obviously you have the whole Urban Meyer thing. Forget about that. But even last year, you're blocking for breakout Trevor Lawrence, who second half last year, ball's coming out quicker, and he can also do a lot with his legs. And he doesn't drop deep in the pocket like Patrick Mahomes is known for having such a deep drop back. But the pros outweigh the cons there. But what does that mean for these tackles? It makes a harder assignment for them. And Orlando Brown Jr. even got some flack during the offseason for saying just that. But he's totally right. I mean, that's just a fact of the matter. It makes for a harder assignment for these guys. So how do they adjust to that? So long tangent aside, I just want to see how these two guys mesh into this new environment, this new offense, and kind of a harder assignment really for those two. Chargers injuries. I really had a hard time thinking of other. The only other thing I could do is basically the inverse of what I did in the pros video, my reason for excitement video, where Kellen Moore doesn't work out. I'm optimistic. I'm excited about Kellen Moore. I think really highly of Kellen Moore. And maybe I'm a little too high on him for most. That's fine. That's just the way I see it. And the inverse of that is like maybe he doesn't work out. Justin Herbert is just naturally conservative. Maybe it wasn't Joe Lombardi. Herbert doesn't like taking deep shots. Maybe that. But injuries. I mean, the Chargers, over the last half decade to a decade, it feels they find a way every year to finish the season as the most banged up squad in the NFL. It's ridiculous. So Joey Bosa's got to be healthy. Khalil Mack's got to stay healthy. Austin Eckler can't miss much time. Those wide receivers, we have got to see 12 plus games of Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnson, and Mike Williams. This team has a shot at winning the AFC West. I'm saying 12 games. I'm giving them wiggle room to get hurt because it always feels like Keenan Allen's going to get a little banged up. Mike Williams is going to roll an ankle. Something's going to happen. And that's the NFL. It's a physical game. That stuff happens. But for this team to have a legitimate Super Bowl chance, this team's got to stay healthy. There's just no other way of putting it. Raiders, the defense in general. And, the reason for hope video, I said the supporting cast, and if you just dragged it onto a different roster, that's a supporting cast that creates a lot of excitement for an offense that maybe takes a quarterback to another level. But as much as I do like the supporting cast and do think, yeah, that's an offense that could put up points, I have a hard time looking at this defense and saying, are they not giving up 28 to 30 a week? Max Crosby's a stud, and honestly, the Raiders and the Rams are kind of in the same spot where it's like they have a stud, no doubt. Like Aaron Donald might still be the best defensive player in football. Max Crosby, to me, is the number 5 edge rusher in football. I did my position rankings, and I just had him over Joey Bosa. I think the dude's a freak. And you add Tyree Wilson, first-round talent. Nate Hobbs is a solid slot corner. Hopefully they do move him back into the slot. I'm excited about Trevon Merrick, but it's Max Crosby and then question marks at best to guys who have played well, should be playing better. And then there's some major holes. I mean, there's just outright some major holes in this roster, or on that side of the ball in specific. So, I don't know. I think this defense can be really rough. And I worry about what that means for Patrick Graham, because I think he can be a good defensive coordinator. I think he has been a good defensive coordinator dating back to his days with the Giants. I just don't think he's got the horses to run this race. I really don't. So I am really worried about what that defense looks like this year in Vegas. On to the AFC North. Ravens, the cornerback room. Marlon Humphrey, injured. Kind of a vague timeline on how much time he's going to miss, so that's problematic. And then Rocky Ya-Sin, who has been an NFL corner Beyond that, he has not been much more than average. So what does that mean? Does Jalen Arbor-Davis figure it out in year 2? Brandon Stevens, can he figure it out of SMU? I don't know. But right now, I'm looking at a defense that doesn't have a great pass rush. Yeah, they add Jadeveon Clowney, but again, I don't know if that's moving the needle in a major direction. So that cornerback room is going to be tested, and right now I just don't think they have a whole lot of great options, especially if Marlon Humphrey is missing time. Bengals injuries, got another one. We're sorry, just like the Chargers. Like, everything feels like it's there. And like I said, for the Reason for Hope video, the Bengals roster is loaded. Dude, it's a great roster. No real holes on there. So what could create holes? Injuries. And specifically, Bengals fans have probably, like, printed out this exact photo and, lit it on fire so they hopefully never see it again. But, if Joe Burrow gets hurt again, or he re-aggravates that calf injury, if he rushes back, or something else pops up, okay, then this changes the outlook big way for the Cincinnati fans. So hopefully we're not talking about that in a couple weeks' time. But if there is anything that's going to hold the team back and there is any reason for concern, it'd be some major injury bugs going through that building. The Browns, Watson struggles, so this is kind of me talking to both sides of my mouth. In the Hope video, I'm like, hey, Deshaun Watson can't be as bad as he was last year. But if he is, that's disastrous for this organization. And it sucks because I think Andrew Berry is actually a really, really good general manager. He makes a lot of shrewd moves, but he will never, ever, ever come close to another opportunity at being another general manager for another team if Deshaun Watson looks as bad as he did the last 6 games last year. If we see that for 17 games this year, after they fully guaranteed his contract, after they gave up 3 first-round picks for a guy with 26 sexual harassment allegations against him, I mean, that's a career-ending move. As much as you've done right, that's the Titanic of GM moves right there. So fingers crossed that, as much as I may not like him as a person, I hope he works out because I do like Andrew Berry. And also, like, it's going to take this season. It's going to be kind of like the Baker season of 2 years ago where it's like there's so much there. The talent feels like the roster's there. It's like, okay, this is the year where the Browns put it together, and then quarterback play holds them back. And if Watson doesn't do better than he did the last 6 games of last year, then it's going to be another disappointing year in Cleveland. Steelers, Matt Canada. Like I said in the Reason for Hope video, I was very close to not going pass rush, instead saying Pickett and his surrounding cast, like the running backs. Feels like the offensive line's made huge headway. Wide receivers are awesome. Love that. 2 tight ends now with Muth and Darnell Washington, the rookie out of Georgia. But what's holding back my excitement? It's Matt Canada. Look, I know the offense looked good in the preseason, but that's great. That's cool and all. They haven't even really seen starters for the most part across the entire board. And putting together, 4 drives, I think is what Pickett's played this year so far in the preseason. 4 drives is still a very small sample size, especially in games that do not count to your overall record. And man, up to this point, I just have not seen much from Matt Canada during his time, both with Big Ben and Kenny Pickett, that inspires a ton of confidence. Wants the ball out quick. Pittsburgh, over his tenure, has been a bottom 3 each and every year in play action rate. Motion rate has not been all that high. And it's weird because it felt like he was a guy who used a ton of motion at college, and it felt like he had a pretty good play action rate. Just hasn't done it at the NFL level. And I got what Pittsburgh, I think what the Steelers were ultimately trying to decide on was, would you rather get a new OC and have Kenny Pickett learn a new offense, or have him deal with Matt Canada's offense, but at least there's some familiarity, and he can go into year 2 with a system that he's played in before. And I don't know if there's really a right answer there, because ideally, you're not having your quarterback go into a brand new offense for the 2nd consecutive year. You don't want that. But at the same time, a better offense is a better offense. So if that 2nd year means going into a new offense, but it's better than what Matt Canada has, I think that would have been the right decision. But we'll see. Matt Canada's had quotes where they're going to open it up now that Pickett has greater understanding. So maybe time will tell a different story. But my argument to that would be Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, that guy didn't need to be babied, And each of the 2 years where Canada was the OC for Big Ben, I mean, the ball's coming out in the snap of a finger. It's all short game. And as much as we blamed it on Big Ben's arm, I honestly think it was Matt Canada. I really do. With how much we got to see since then, a full season of what that offense looks like with Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett, I don't think it was Big Ben. I really do think it's Matt Canada. And because of that, I don't know how much the talent on that offense is really going to be fully maximized because of him. All right, on to the NFC side. Cowboys, Dak's turnovers. I don't think it's going to repeat. He didn't even have the most turnover-worthy plays using a PFF stat there last year, but he did lead the league in picks, and sometimes curses stay on your back. And it's the Dallas Cowboys we're talking about, right? Haven't been to the Super Bowl in 27 years, something like that. It's been rough, and they're trying to get that monkey off the back big time. And maybe Dak's turnovers is the new iteration that monkey takes, right? But I don't think this will be an issue. So again, I feel like I'm reaching a straw that I won't personally grab, because I think he'll bounce back. I think the turnover problem last year, for lack of a better word, was a little bit of a fluke, again, for lack of a better word. Yes, will he have interceptions? Yes, no quarterback is perfect, but I don't think he'll lead the league in interceptions this year. And honestly, I don't think he'll lead the league or really come close to most turnover-worthy plays using that PFF stat. So I'm not concerned about it. That's part of the reason why I think the Cowboys are just going to be a really, really good team. Giants, Darren Waller's injury history. Look, I have no problem with NFL teams using a tight end as their number one. That's why I'm saying, like, hey, I think Dalton Kincaid could be the number 2 in Buffalo because I've seen Kansas City use a tight end as their number 1. Looks like the Giants could be doing the same thing with Darren Waller. And then, you know, there were times in San Francisco where George Kittle kind of was that. So we've seen it done before. I'm not really worried about that. And if Waller stays healthy, it gives me a new outlook on that offense and where it could actually work, where Waller's eating up in the middle of the field, Jalen Hyatt's forcing the issue and forcing safeties to take a step back, opening up the middle of the field that much more. Still have Sterling Shepard, still have Darius Slayton. Can you use Saquon as a pass catcher? Okay, it's all kind of coming together. I can see what they're trying to go for here. But that is also dependent on Darren Waller being on the field. And if he's not, then this team is right back where it was pre-Darren Waller trade, where it's like, who's that number 1 target guy? They just don't have a guy who's going to reliably win them games. Kind of like what we talked about in New England. They don't have an alpha. And because of that, I feel like that's going to come back to haunt in close games if Waller misses a lot of time. Eagles, new coordinators. Again, I kind of feel like I'm reaching here because I think Brian Johnson, him and Sirianni are basically going to roll it back with what they were doing with Shane Steichen. I don't think that playbook changes a whole lot. If anything, it's just probably adding new wrinkles. And if those don't work, you go back to what works, basically all of last year. And then Deshaun Desai, I put him in the picture here where it's like, he is a very different defensive mind than Jonathan Gannon. So maybe that's where your cause for concern can go. And they didn't bring back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, it felt like, because Gannon wasn't back and because maybe Desai didn't have that role. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Only time will tell. But maybe that just factor of newness does complicate things. And maybe it just means Philadelphia gets off to a slow start, and in turn, they don't win the division. And in turn, become the number 1 wild card seed. Totally plausible, but there's no guarantee that they have that much of an effect because Sirianni's still there. But if there is a way where this could go wrong for Philadelphia, that's one of the things that came to mind. Then the Commanders, I got to go the offensive line. And, Charles Leno's in this picture, and there's going to be a couple other guys where I kind of use this term, but Charles Leno's kind of frustratingly average. He's good enough to start, and again, there's plenty of teams that would take just an average tackle on their offensive line because they have to deal with far worse. But he's also a guy that gets dominated by better players, the exception of the Micah Parsons games. Those matchups actually didn't go too terrible for him last year. But for the most part, like, you line him up against Myles Garrett, you're not feeling good about that if you're a Washington fan. Just using that as a generality. Or TJ Watt or, whoever. But that being said, the entire offensive line as a whole, even beyond Leno, new starter at center, new starter at left guard, Sam Cosmi's kicking inside to play guard. I thought he was fine at tackle. Maybe he gets better at guard. We'll have to wait and see. Never really was a big Andrew Wiley fan, and when Kansas City's moving on from you at tackle after what they had to go through in the Super Bowl 3 years ago, I feel like that says a lot. So now they're playing him at right tackle. Why? I guess familiar with Bieniemy, but I don't know, man. There's nothing about that unit that really wows me. There's just a couple of pieces where I'm like, Cosby, I like to tackle, but now they're moving his position, so why? And Leno's solid. He's fine. He's good enough. So there's just nothing there that really wows me. And for a Ron Rivera-led team that wants to run the ball, they're gonna kind of go about this old school. That could be an issue. And also, first-year starter in Sam Howell behind that offensive line, that could get ugly quick. All right, on to the next division here, the NFC South. Falcons, Desmond Ridder. I'm sorry, he just has not done much to inspire confidence. You could say the 4 games last year, each one got a little bit better than the previous, but I mean, like, marginally, like razor-thin improvement. So we'll see. Another offseason. They add Bijan, added the offensive line with Matt Bergeron, sign a Mac Hollins. Maybe they figure it out. I'm just not seeing it right now for Desmond Ridder. And if he's not the answer, I'm really curious about what this team try to does in the offseason next year. Do they get into a Kyler Murray type of sweepstakes if he becomes available? Are they trying to gun for Caleb Williams, Drake May at the top of the draft? Or are they someone who's suiting and looking after a Ryan Tannehill in free agency, Kirk Cousins if he hits the market? I think all those options are viable, assuming Desmond Ridder doesn't work out. I've been wrong. I will be wrong again. Maybe this is the time, but I'm just not feeling it from Ridder right now. Panthers, I'll go to the wide receiver room. I still have a ton of faith in Jonathan Mingo. He's one of my favorite wide receivers out of this year's draft class. Not top 5 or anything like that, but I was like, dude, this guy is like I think he was like wide receiver 7, maybe 8 for me. And I was like pretty confident about him being like a really, really good number 2 wide receiver at that ranking. Right now, he might have to be the 1. We'll also see, DJ Chark. There's some upside there, of course. Terrence Marshall Jr. hasn't really had an opportunity to showcase if he can be a 1 because look at the quarterbacks he's been playing with the last couple of years. So there's just a lot of uncertainty there right now, which makes me feel a little trepidatious going into a season where you're starting the number 1 overall pick, and I want Bryce Young to hit the ground running. And if he doesn't, then people are going to be like, oh, see, he's short. There's just already so much that's already there's already an argument built up against Bryce Young for why it won't work. So I don't want to see that come to fruition. And if there is a pathway where that happens, I don't think it's the offensive line. I think it's the wide receiver room because you compare those 2 units, the offensive line's in a much better spot and actually in an upward trajectory moving forward, especially with the Kim Ekwonu. Wide receivers are right now, it's like, we don't know what Terrence Marshall Jr. is. Mingo's a rookie. Chark misses a ton of time. Laviska Shenault's been a disappointment at this point, so don't know what I'm getting right there. But hopefully all these guys kind of work out and it all kind of comes together and Bryce Young's just a stud year 1 onward. Saints, I'll go depth. And I put Cam Jordan in this picture because I think he kind of encapsulates what I mean here. If Marshawn Lattimore, Demario Davis, or Cam Jordan in specific go down, they're going to really test the depth of those certain position groups. Lattimore, I know there's Saints fans who really like Alontae Taylor and Paulson Adebo. To me, if those 2 guys both have to start, that's going to be an issue for New Orleans. And if Demario Davis gets hurt, Pete Warner's a good player, but then what about thereafter? And if Cam Jordan goes down with an injury, look, I'm a Notre Dame fan. I liked Isaiah Foskey. I think he actually has a very comparable draft profile to Marcus Davenport. He actually made a lot of sense to go to New Orleans. But him and Peyton Turner, it's a rookie and unknown commodity who has played less than 400 snaps in his career. So we're just... We don't know what waters we're treading into. And those 3 players might be the 3 best players they have on defense, right? Lattimore, Davis, and Jordan. I think there's an argument you can be made that they're the best 3 on that side of the ball. The same can be said about offense, too. Ryan Ramczyk goes down. Man, that offensive line starts looking a lot more bleak, in my opinion. If Chris Olave goes down, it's ooh, now that wide receiver room is injury-riddled Michael Thomas and Rashid Shaheed. How many points are we putting up this week? So I don't know. They kind of feel like they're 1 or 2 major injuries away from being a team that is whatever in the NFC South when they should be the team that wins that division. Then we get to the Bucks. Baker Mayfield. He's had a hard time kind of pulling away from Kyle Trask throughout training camp. And honestly, whoever ended up coming away with that job, they weren't going to inspire a ton of confidence in me. Neither one has felt like a guy who really has seized the opportunity. And in turn, it feels like it's going to be another year where that roster, which feels pretty good. I think the offensive line's going to be better than it was last year. Mike Evans may be approaching a hill or maybe just a step up beyond it, but him, Chris Godwin, Trey Palmer, Russell Gage when he's healthy, if he does come back at all this season, there's reports that he's going to be out for the year. However that plays out, there's still enough wide receiver talent for that to be a really, really good offense. And then on the other side of the ball, I think the defense can be at least middle of the road. Todd Bowles always coaches up a good defense, like the cornerback talent. Still got Levante David there. Vita Vea is a great nose tackle. Add Kalijah Kancey to the mix. Year 3, Joe Tryon-Jacob. This should be a good team. But they're going to be held back by the quarterback play. So Trask, Baker, whoever it is ends up probably being somewhere between QB 32 and 26 by the end of the year. And that's just not going to be enough to win that division, unfortunately. All right, on to the NFC West, 2 divisions to go. Cardinals, look, it's a process. So when it came to thinking of one thing that could go wrong or one reason for concern, there were too many that came to mind, right? I still don't love the secondary. Not totally in love with the offensive line, like the tackles, but we're also kind of figuring out, is Terrence Johnson Jr. going to play guard? Is you moving Josh Jones back there? What are we doing here? Can you trade one of these older tackles? Who knows? Running back room's fine. Hollywood Brown's a good enough wide receiver, but is he a 1? Do I love that? Do I love Rondale Moore as a 2? Not really. Can Michael Wilson make an immediate impact as a 3rd-round rookie? He's missed a lot of time in college, too. So Kyler Murray, how much time is he going to miss this year? Look, it's just going to be a bad year in Arizona. And I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to be wrong about this, but there's just not enough talent on that roster given where the NFL's at right now. They just do not match up well with just about any other roster you stack up against. But if you're a Cardinals fan, that's probably a good thing. Legitimately, tank, get yourself a high pick. Hope Houston isn't great. Hope they finish 5-12, 6-11, have another top 10 pick, and then let's really kick off this Monty Austin 4th era with a splash move next offseason and with a splash draft that really kickstarts this team's trajectory moving forward. So really couldn't think of one reason for concern because, don't hate me for saying it, but you're a bad team, and just embrace that. I think that's what you should be doing. Rams, the non-superstars, dude, and this is kind of playing off what I said in the Reason for Hope video. Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford, Aaron Donald, those guys are great. Jordan Fuller's solid. John Johnson III, I could see him having an avenue to be a bounce-back guy. And that's kind of where it ends. Rob Havenstein's a pretty solid player. But yeah, there's a lot of holes. There's a lot of question marks, a lot of young players that I haven't seen a whole lot of. And then guys like Darion Kendrick, who I saw Tom Brady pick apart down the stretch of that Bucs-Rams game last year. He just legitimately was not going to stop targeting Darion Kendrick. And he's slated to be a starting corner this year. Now, I know that's Tom Brady. Yes, I know that means it was Mike Evans, Chris Godwin catching passes. Yes, I hear you. But this team outside the superstars, like when you saw the Rams win the Super Bowl, that stars and scrubs approach, it was stars and then like good enough, competent NFL players. And also there were more than just Kupp, Donald, and Stafford. It was Von Miller. It was John Johnson III at the peak of his powers. Plus the offensive line in a much better state. Still had Robert Woods, still had OBJ up until the Super Bowl. There was more there to offer. And right now it's like you have the superstars and then the rest of the roster looks like it could be the worst roster in the NFL. Like if you just replace Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald with league average players at those positions, I might be saying the Rams have the worst roster in football, legitimately. So, yeah, those non-superstar players are going to have to prove me wrong this upcoming season if the Rams are going to be anything more than, like 5-12, 6-11. Then we get to the 49ers. Not a whole lot to pick out here because it's a good team, but Colton McKivitz, and I felt like I picked on him a ton this offseason. I don't really mean to. He's in the NFL. I'm not. But he is the weak link of an offensive line, and the offensive line is a weak link position group. So if they get into a playoff game and they're seeing the 49ers, I can assure you Micah Parsons is not lining up against Trent Williams. I can guarantee that. He will be lining up against Colton McKivitz. So that could present a lot of problems there for San Francisco. The alternative to this is he might not even be starting at right tackle. Like we're about to get to the point of training camp where a bunch of veterans get cut and teams scoop them up. And they get a patch starter for a year. And the 49ers might do exactly that at right tackle. So we might not even be talking about Colton McKivitz starting week 1. We just don't know, but as of right now, he is slotted in to be the starter, and he is the one weak spot on the roster I can point to in San Francisco's situation. Some of the other offensive line starters I'm not crazy about, but Colton McKivitz is a guy who 3 years in the league, has played like less than 500 snaps, not great PFF grades. What I've seen hasn't been anything super inspiring. Not that it's been super disastrous, but it has been anything that's just like, yeah, he'll be fine. He'll be good. So I got to point to that as my reason for concern. Seahawks, I'll go edge rushers. And it's not that they'll be a bad unit. Like Uchenna Nwosu got that extension, I think rightfully so. I like him more as a hybrid player, but he's become a decent enough edge rusher. Boy, Amafe, second rounder. Derek Hall, second rounder this last year. They got talent there. They just don't have a guy. They don't have a dude. A guy who can win them a game, can be a game wrecker, can be a double-digit sack type of year guy. And because of that, what does that mean for that defense? Draymond Jones might be able to hit double digits, but he's doing that from the interior. Does he have that force multiplying effect like guys like Jeffrey Simmons, Aaron Donald, Chris Jones have? If so, then okay, maybe those concerns subsides. But as of right now, it's just like, man, 3rd and 8, you need to have that sack. Who's that guy coming off the edge making a big play for you? And I don't know who the answer would be. But we'll see. This is also a team that I think has a really good roster. Not a lot of holes I can pick at. So edge rusher is kind of the one spot where I'm like, I think they could definitely be better there. All right, last division, the Bears, defensive line. And I just got to get a quick anecdote or quick tangent out of the way. Look, I saw so many people excited about the Yannick Ngakoue signing with Chicago, and I'm like, why? Nothing against Yannick Ngakoue, again, in the NFL, and I'm not. But we do this song and dance every year, where he signs a contract for $8, $10, $12 million a year. And people are like, oh, really? Yannick Ngakoue? He's still a solid pass rusher. He can work. May not be great against the run, maybe a little undersized, but as a pass rusher, he's a valuable ad. The Bears gave him a 1-year, $10 million contract in a time in his career where he has no reason sniffing $10 million a year. They did it so the Bears meet the spending minimum the league year. And I saw people literally giving it an A as a free agency grade. A+. I saw a tweet saying that. And I'm like, dude, they're literally doing this because they have to spend this money. It's a mandate. They're literally just trying not to get in trouble. And this was just the one guy who was still a free agent that they were like, yeah, no off-field concerns, can play for us. We'll give him the $10 million. We'll hit our league minimum. So all that to say, defensive line's still an issue. Yannick Ngakoue is not a very good run defender. He might be okay, serviceable enough as a third down pass rusher, but still not enough that's like, this guy's a dude. He's a game wrecker. He's going to win you a game late. He's not that dude. DeMarcus Walker, a couple of rookie interior guys, Zach Pickens and Gervon Dexter. There's just no guys that I look to and I know they're going to have a huge impact on that defense. Maybe the rookies step up. Maybe they're better than I thought. Maybe they find a way to hide Ngakoue on early downs, can keep him on the field for all 3 downs, and he becomes a really big part of that pass rush. Maybe, but I just don't see it happening. So that defensive line, especially for a Matt Eberflus defense that needs that 3-tech in the middle, needs that defensive line to play a big role in his defensive success, I just don't see it happen this year in Chicago. Lions, Jared Goff. And if I were to just close my eyes and say frustratingly average, Jared Goff would be the first thing that pops in my mind. And look, I don't think he's bad, right? Like his good years have come with good offensive lines and Sean McVay's offense. And then last year, good offensive line, at least one wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and a good offensive line in Ben Johnson. So who's to say, hey, Amon-Ra St. Brown's still there, the offensive line's still very good, and Ben Johnson's still there. So Jared Goff's going to be good. I think it's just changed, though. Like, you look at the Lions, and last year, like, them going 9-8 was, oh my God, let's go. The Lions are here. They finally turned the corner. They go 9-8 this season, and Jared Goff is average. Lions fans are going to be doing what the Falcons are doing, and they're going to be doing what the Titans are doing next offseason, where it's just like, we have a good roster, we can be better, we just need a better quarterback. It kind of like what the Vikings did with Case Keenum. That's exactly where I think the Lions are kind of heading towards. The Vikings, when they had the NFC Championship run with Case Keenum, I think that's exactly where the Lions are going to go. They're going to win a playoff game, and then Jared Goff's going to have a stinker, and they're going to be like, well, yep, Goff held us back. Or they're going to go 9-8 again, miss the playoffs, and be like, well, we should have been so much better, and you know what it was? We just didn't have enough late game, Joe Burrow type of moments because Jared Goff's not Joe Burrow, right? So I think this is going to be the year where the complexion has shifted and the expectations have changed so much for the Lions that Jared Goff, instead of being, he's good enough to get us to 9-8, it's going to be, he's holding us back from 12-5. He's holding us back from an NFC championship appearance. So I think the rhetoric's going to change about Jared Goff this upcoming year from Lions fans. As much as they have loved him so far, I think this is going to be the year where your expectations are so high that Jared Goff's going to be the limitation to those high expectations. So frustratingly average, he's not bad. He's just not very good. He's not great. He lives there, somewhere there in the middle. Packers, I'll go Jordan Love here. I think it's going to kind of be a Jameis Winston experience this year. He'll have some big games, put up some gaudy numbers, and he'll be a reason why you win that game. And the next week out, he'll be a reason why you lose it because he'll turn it over 4 times. I can totally see that playing out. Maybe he's more consistent than I'm giving him credit for, but I just look at him as too much of an up and down decision maker to where I'm just a little concerned about what that means entirely for this year's Green Bay Packers offense. And to round things out, Minnesota Vikings, their cornerback situation. Hey, Mekhi Blackmon had great PFF grades in college. I was just worried about the size. I don't know if it translates to the NFL level. Byron Murphy's a good player, but he's doing that from the nickel. And then Caleb Evans is a second-year player. And that is a Brian Flores defense that is tough to be a corner in because he's going to play a lot of man coverage. And if you ain't up to snuff, we will see it. And you will lose a lot of one-on-ones, and you will give up chunk plays, and that Minnesota secondary will be perceived as just as bad as it was last year. I'm hoping Flores coaches him up and kind of gets over that. Maybe Blackman's better than I thought. Maybe Byron Murphy has a huge impact, even though he's going to primarily be playing on the inside. Only time will tell. Maybe Caleb Evans is better than what I've been giving him credit for. There's just a lot of questions I need answers right now. And that uncertainty, while I don't think Minnesota's defense can be as bad as it was last year, just because it was one of the worst in the league, they don't give me a whole lot of reasons to be setting my sights a lot higher, right? Like maybe they're not the 30th defense in the league or 31st, whatever they were last year. Maybe they just get to 24, 23, which is still a step in the right direction. But had they done more with the secondary and gotten maybe another corner on top of Byron Murphy or used an earlier asset or drafted a different guy that I liked a little bit more than Mekhi Blackmon, like if they got a Darius Rush, just to throw one name out there, maybe I'm saying, hey, they could be, somewhere there in the mid to late teens, but I don't know. Kind of reaching for straws. I like this team a lot. And, maybe Marcus Davenport, if he's not Zadarius Smith, maybe that's a reason for concern. Again, kind of reaching for straws linebacking room, but that's a position group I think you can kind of make do with. So to me, it's the cornerback room. If they don't get any better than what they were last year in this more difficult scheme to play in as a corner, might be another tough year for that Vikings defense. But guys, that's going to do it for a bit of a downer video to put together, but hopefully one that you still enjoyed. This is one reason for concern for all 32 NFL teams. Let me hear your thoughts down below, whether it's your favorite team or another team we talked about today in the video, whether you think I got it right or wrong. Let me hear what you think the biggest concern for that squad is down below in the comments section. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hit that like button if you did. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. I want to see more football content like this. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.